Hi there, my name is Andy Kerr, and at 2 o'clock today, I'll be joined by Tim Cahill for the second of the Aspire Speaker Series events. Tim is Australia's all-time leading goal scorer. He's played in cup finals and been nominated for the Ballon d'Or. But what drives him? What are his passions? And what about his new role here in Qatar? Well, if you want to join the conversation, if you've got a question for Tim, or if you just want to listen along, why don't you join us in just under 10 minutes' time right here for the second of the Aspire Speaker Series events. Hi there, welcome along then to the second of the Aspire Speaker Series events. I'm Andy Kerr, and today my guest is someone you will all know very well. Australia's all-time leading goal scorer, a man who's played in cup finals, led his national side to international glory, been nominated for the Ballon d'Or, and now who works here in Qatar. I am, of course, talking about Tim Cahill. Tim, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Tim, I suppose the sensible place to start would be at the beginning. So, can I take you right back to when you were a teenager? What was it like to leave home, to travel to a whole new continent across the world and go to Millwall?
Yeah, it's difficult because at that age, back then, there was no internet that was quick, there was no FaceTime, social media, nothing. I think the biggest thing for me, I was very driven as a kid to succeed. So I did everything I could possible, trained hard, fully focused on school, and extra, training when it counted. And I played at the highest level. I was told as a kid that I'll never make it.
Right.
And one of the things for me was seeing whether I was good enough. I got home from school one day, and after my dad had made numerous calls, I sat with my parents, and my parents had said to me, listen, it's time. We've made some calls to England. We've taken a loan out, because we rented our whole lives. We had a comfortable upbringing, but it wasn't something where we owned our house and all this sort of stuff. And obviously got my brothers, my sister, and they had dreams they wanted to follow too. So my parents said, look, we've got a loan. We know you're ready. We know you're focused. You're going to stay with my mum's side in-laws in England, and you're going to have a trial. So when I look at it, I wasn't fazed, not one bit, because I knew how hard my parents had worked for that opportunity. So I look back at that as very daunting, but at the same time, very exciting. It's 20 odd years ago, but I'm very privileged to have that opportunity.
What did you know about Millwall then? Had you heard about the reputation of the Den? I mean, the old Den in the 80s had a reputation of being really intimidating. Did you know any of that before you went?
Look, I didn't know the deep underlying culture of the club and who they were and what comes with the fans, but I knew they were passionate. But the thing for me was more the opportunity. They were in the second division. When I look at that, I just wanted the opportunity to train every day. I didn't think about anything other than making myself better. And to be honest with you, when I trialled for Millwall, that was my level. I knew that was my level. Like, I wasn't ready for, when I got offered a contract at the same time for a championship club, at the time the first division, and I also got offered a contract for the Premier League at 16.
Did you?
Having the talks after.
Who was that with?
Vaguely, I speak about in the past, it was Nottingham Forest at the time for the Premier League. We were talking to whether I was interested to sign something there, more money. I think it was QPR in the first division. And then Millwall, and after having the discussions, I went to the club that gave me my opportunity. And I think that's really important when you start your career, to know your levels, to know also what your stepping stone is going to be to become a player that could potentially have the opportunity to be a pro.
So you went through the steps at Millwall. When did you know that you were attracting attention from, I don't want to be disrespectful, but from bigger clubs?
No, it's, I was very fortunate because when I started, I didn't spend much time in the youth. I think it was like around 18. I made my debut. Late runs into the box, I was excited. One thing I had is I had an engine that basically could cover every blade of grass on the pitch. And because you're so excited and passionate, there was no control. So I was still like a rabbit, in front of a headlight. So I knew early that I could score a lot of goals, and that's what I did. I made a massive impact within that team and made myself indispensable very early on because of what I produced on the pitch. Never missing training, never missing games, carrying injuries. And when you play consistently, I'd never left Millwall till after 250 games, 60 odd goals. But it was before when we got promoted from the second to the first, and then the FA Cup run. The most famous goal for me at Millwall would be against Sunderland in the semi-final at Old Trafford. I scored the winner. And literally that's when Australia come calling as well. That's when the noises started happening from international teams from around the world because of my passports. I'd already made the noises. There were already people asking questions, but Old Trafford, full house, scored the winner, and it was all set up to play at Wembley against Man United, Ronaldo, Giggs, Van Nistelrooy. And that was like Christmas for me.
I suppose if you're going to go out, that's the way to do it, a cup final. But you talked about the international career, which was starting to blossom at that time. But your first international football wasn't with Australia, was it?
No, I had a special case in the fact that there was a stage when I had the opportunity to go to Samoa at the same time. My grandmother's there, and I went there for probably 3 months. At the same time, they incorporated me to play in an AFC for Samoa, being camp. We spoke about it. I joined. I played, I can't remember, minutes. And then I don't think anyone ever thought that at that age, I was so young that I'd end up playing professionally in England. We had it, that I'd be fine playing for Samoa. It's not against any rules. And in the end, I had to go through a special process to get cleared. I think there's only not even a handful of players that have played for 2 countries. I think maybe Giggs as a schoolboy for England. And mine in the end, after talks with the federations and seeing through all the detail, that they cleared me to play for Australia. So yeah, it was an interesting start, but at the same time, I don't think none of that would have happened if I didn't do as well for Millwall, because the noises were happening very early on. London clubs up north calling every year, trying to buy me. And I stayed as long as I could at Millwall. We got to the playoffs to get to the Premier League. We lost to Birmingham, and then that was the time for me to go.
So there's probably people watching of a certain age who that whole process of changing countries isn't quite so confusing, because nowadays it's a lot easier to change from youth to full-age international. So how many different countries could you have represented? Was the Republic of Ireland a possibility? Was Mick McCarthy investigating that?
It was actually Don Givens and Mick McCarthy. They put the call in. There was discussions. And I think what's really important, that you have to know who you are, regardless of how many passports you hold, because English passport, obviously my mum's from Samoa, born in Australia.
Which passport do you have?
I have English and Australian.
Right.
And I always say it was an easy decision, and it's no disrespect to Ireland. If you can't sing the national anthem and feel it, then it's not the same. I don't think anyone can understand it, being involved. Whether I played in OFC or in Asia, any game, it feels like the best feeling in your life, singing the national anthem with your jersey on. Literally, it's
Australia.
Of Australia, it's your dream.
Because the Irish were a really strong nation at the start of the 2000s, weren't they? They'd just gone to the World Cup in Japan and South Korea, done really well.
Yeah, but when I'd had the talks with my dad and even my parents, I'm very passionate. I've only ever had 2 clubs in England. Millwall, I stayed as long as I could, and Everton, I stayed regardless of the offers or other clubs, and I stayed as long as I could too. So, and that's why now I just visited Everton, sat with the chairman, to support Rafa Benitez, to see how the club's doing, to meet Marcel Brands in my role now as a chief sports officer and executive and working around football's relations. It's the biggest thing. And I have strong affinities to club, but the most important thing is when you finish, who are you? What have you achieved? Is it trophies? Is it respect? Is it a future, not only for me, but for my children, and also what legacy are you going to leave? And I feel, playing for Australia, it's pretty much half my portfolio of who I am.
So even if it had been England calling, Australia would have always been your country?
Yeah, definitely. And I have these sort of conversations with my children, because all my kids were born in England. My 16-year-old is a professional at Everton, just signed his 2-year scholar professional contract. He's 6'2". The growth and maturation in children are different. And the key elements with Shay is I just want him to give everything and not think about your country, because unless you train well and go through the processes and understand the process, you won't be picked. And these are all the things here in Qatar that I've really enjoyed is the process of the long burn, the long vision. You know, how can you win an Asian Cup with this population? You know, and I keep trying to bed this story into people so they can understand is Australia has 24, 28 million people. Qatar has 3 million. But when you break up the populations to Qatari locals, the maths is mind-blowing. So I've really enjoyed processes of breaking things down into context and thinking about the bigger picture and thinking about how to help football. And it's a really exciting role here in Qatar.
Do people like to listen to the stories? Do people here, does it resonate the same as it does in Australia? The first man to score for your country at a FIFA World Cup, now all-time leading goal scorer for Australia. Things that I suppose, does it mean anything to you? Do you realise now what you've done?
You know, when you retire, that's when you start having the conversations. That's when you start, you know, being an ambassador of a World Cup and then realising that people really respect you for your football, but also your academic achievements. Because I left school at 16. I revisited school at 39 properly. And my message is how important education is, not just to be a footballer, it's to have a brain, to build your portfolio. I'm lucky I did that, but I look at my career as what have I achieved? I've achieved the respect that I wanted, but here in Qatar, I think it's more about sharing my journey. It's more about relating that it is possible, because you've won an Asian Cup. We won the Asian Cup for the 19s. So there's so many elements that I don't focus on, but the majority of the time when I walk around Qatar or anything, it's like, you know, you scored against us here. You know, then if I see someone from any country, the GCC, there's probably not a country I haven't scored against or knocked them out of a tournament. So it's massive respect, Asian countries and all that, but also it's sharing the wealth of knowledge, but also being implement something that can help on the pitch and also off the pitch. Because I think if you can help create better human beings mentally, it's just as much as important as just the physical element.
I'm guessing from you then that education is something that's really genuinely important to you. It's not something that you're just throwing out there. Is this something you've done throughout your life? When did you realise that you couldn't just rely on football?
Football's my passion, but football doesn't own me. I played for 23 years, and this is the most important thing. When I try and relay that back into business, whether I'm doing Jessore Institute or working with Bocconi or working with Harvard, there's many case studies that we do over the years with our class at Harvard. We get together. You can't let your job control you and own you, because what happens is it's when you finish it, you're out of it. And that transition is so difficult for some of my teammates, for people and professions. And it's sort of like I stepped back away from it for 2 years. I decided to start my coaching license. I decided to go back to school. I did the 7-day course at Harvard with Anita Valace with selected students, but I'd already premeditated that 2 years before when I did my interview. So the reason why education is important is what happens if you get injured? So I say this to my son, he's 16. You know, you've got a great contract now, you've got the future ahead of you, but what happens if you get injured? Because that happens. What happens if, you know, it doesn't go well? You're starting in the Premier League, I started in the second division. So my passion to share, if you finish your career, why can't you work just as hard as you did playing now that I'm an executive? I really find it hard to find the structure in, you know, I'm 24/7, 7 a.m. get up, 7:15 I have my breakfast, 7:45 I leave the house.
Still now?
I'm talking about football. I was a robot.
Okay.
8:15 I get to training. 8:45 my physio's, you know, ready to give me a massage to warm me up. Pre-activation, I might go for a swim. So there's so many things before you start training, and training starts at 10:30. Then what do you do after training? So when I have an office job and you only have 3 meetings in a day and you have different tasks, you find with an athlete's mind is you have to finish the task. I have to finish within, there has to be an end goal. I can't leave something. So I find those traits really, really exciting because I think it's helped me a lot. But you have to make sure education is the forefront, because the new world now, I don't think you can purely just rely on football.
How much of that has been you? How much have you driven yourself into education? Does football as a whole do enough to help prepare players coming through now, and not necessarily players at the top level who earn huge sums of money, but players coming through at the lower levels, do we do enough to help them prepare for the transition afterwards?
Look, I think you do, because you've got so many great footballers unions that help with investments, that help, but also there's got to be accountability from the individual, you know, the people that you have around you, and as long as you can create the vision for them and you can show them the pitfalls, then that's the most important part, because you don't know what's tax, what's a mortgage, what's interest free.
When did you learn all that?
I learned a few tough lessons, you know.
Really?
Yeah, of course, because you buy cars, you know, then you swap them, you lose a lot of money, you don't know about inflation, deflation, you buy properties. And I suppose you have to go through those lessons.
Because you're a really young man trying to do things in a very adult world, and at a young age you have a lot of disposable income.
Yeah, I did, and the good thing is I've got a tight-knit family. You know, my first port of call when I was 19, 20 was to help buy a house with the family. We have a family home and we have great investments together, but it's a small world if you don't include your family. You need them close to you, and most people that I know who keep a tight-knit family bond succeed, even if their career is short, but they've got them planning with them, they're setting up businesses. And I was very fortunate commercially. I had a great journey. Everton was amazing to me, and like I said, the opportunities that arose to go elsewhere, it wasn't in the forefront of my mind because I had children young, you know, 24, 3 kids. I've got 4 kids now playing, and my wife's happy, my kids are happy. You have to think about the bigger picture, their schooling. If I move them, you know, we moved at 30 when I was 32 to New York to join New York Red Bulls, and you have Thierry Henry and Rafa Marquez and Juninho Pernambucano. I'm playing now in New York City, you know, in bright lights, and now it's all commercial. And I'm like, oh, I need to learn now.
Was that the change?
Massive change. But I had to change because I would have had to retire from Australia. I wouldn't have played in my 3rd World Cup if I stayed at Everton. It was too much on the body. So there's so many...
What the football in England was too much?
Too much. I'd played 250 games again, so 500 games by the age of 32 just in England without international football. And I think there was 2 World Cups up to then, plus Olympics, plus Asian Cups, Confederation. There's only so much you can take mentally and physically, and you have to adapt your body to what the exit's going to be. And I knew at 32, my exit plan was to play in India and China before I retired.
Well, you planned that well in advance?
Well in advance.
Why?
Because I've always had a business brain. They're the 2 of the biggest continents in the world. And it's really important when you see the Citigroup, how they're structured, and they were just starting to come on the scene. And I was lucky enough to go to New York. Then I went to Shanghai Shenhua with the Greenland Group. Then I went to Hangzhou Greentown with the Greentown Group. And then I went to Melbourne City with the Citigroup. So
this is all to educate yourself rather than for the football?
Well, you've got to balance. So where do you want to be? Do you want to be a coach after? If I did, I had the options of China, India. I also had really strong background in grassroots. So I like to build methodologies, pathways, syllabuses or plans for clubs or for federations. And so my passion was, okay, go and learn about it, gather as much information, prepare your badges when you retire. So those groups, the City Group was a great experience, seeing the way that they run the business, not the football. Let's just think of what's important. And then we take that to India. I was with the Tata Group, so the biggest group in the world when it comes to, you know, cars and all these sorts of things. So there's so much to try and share without boring people now about the business behind football. And now being here in Qatar, I can bring that all into one. And I'm with Asbaier Academy, and you're across so many different organisations, but the biggest thing is being able to be part of this institution of where they train every day, where you have all the analytics, the data, the analysis, you know their warm-up, where they're going to be, everything. And that for me excites me because it means there's a process and an algorithm behind success. And it's not something that is the answer. All it is knowledge. And now having my UEFA Pro license, it aligns really well. It aligns everything that I'm about. And people say, well, why don't you just take the Everton assistant manager's job, or why don't you just take a championship team? How's that going to benefit me for the long run? How's it going to benefit me when I'm 41 years old, when I can go here and learn and really take in much more than just a short vision of being a manager or an assistant manager for a couple of years?
Yeah, I can tell it's clearly something you've put a lot of thought into. When anyone watching here now and wondering, what actually do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's your role in the whole Qatar FIFA 2022 World Cup?
I think firstly, if we talk about Qatar FIFA 22 World Cup, it's about education. You think about being in 4 World Cups as a player, now being able to be here roughly 3 years on.
You've never been to one as a fan, have you? Only as a player?
Never as a fan. That'll be my first one. But you think about logistics, you think about stadiums, you think about the setup plans. To be able to listen to discussions or give a comment, whether we're sitting with Xavi, Cafu, Ep2, about, you know, it's a unique World Cup because it's 70 miles. There's 8 stadiums. Mm-hmm. These 8 stadiums, 7 of them are air conditioned. They have all these amazing things built from scratch that blows me away. But the key element is you're going to be able to watch 2 games in a day. Afterwards, I think more about how it's going to help to help other countries as well with the stadiums, how the stadiums can be reused, all these sorts of plans. But I'm excited just as much about that as the programs that come with it. So we have a responsibility to be out there with Generation Amazing. I write children's books. I was just at the refugee camp there the other day.
How was that?
It was amazing. And they're the things you don't need people to write about. They're things that makes myself feel good. But not only here, we set up community centres, maybe in India. We set up programs across the world.
Is this all part of Generation Amazing?
Generation Amazing, Supreme Committee. So go again. They've helped empower me with education, Jessore Institute and Bocconi with my sports diploma.
What's Jessore? What do you do there?
So Jessore's the same thing. It's a course that you do over 6 blocks that's very intense. Assignments, having to be diligent with the assignments, having to listen, and also with my transformation into the executive role, helping me learn about the ecosystem, the structure, the strategy, the people you work with, building building relations inside a workplace. So there's so many different angles this is going, but as a chief sports officer, it's not just football. We also have table tennis, athletics, what else? Squash. We support motorsports, fencing, learning about the individuals, the kids, their day-to-day program, the coaches, there's high performance, and then we have the footballers, which is the national team as well. So we work together as a group under Ivan Bravo, who is the mastermind behind the project that's doing amazing things, and everyone within the Aspire zone, all trying our best to produce talent that will help the national team compete in the World Cup.
What's the overall goal? Is it to win titles, to win medals, or is it I keep hearing the term, and I've been here 9 years, legacy.
Yeah, really important. What are we going to leave? I think the biggest thing for me when first coming here, one thing I can promise, I can help kids follow their dreams, and that's a promise. My metric isn't winning, because when you look at it, the metric is if you get a role as a chief sports officer, you have to try and evolve my experiences on the pitch onto paper, and then more importantly into the minds of the children. So I spent 2 years working with Qatar national team under 16s as a coach. Mm-hmm. So I went to Italy, we went to camps, we did the Alcas, I was studying here, so I was working inside, getting to know things. And I also spent a couple of years with Everton. So I was also the assistant manager with Everton under 16s. And I think that's a really important age because that's the growth and maturation. So I keep saying it here. Yes, you want to win. But I remember when we qualified for a World Cup for Australia with 28 million people in 2006 after 32 years, that's like winning a World Cup. So just think about it. And when I was the first ever goal scorer for Australia, I didn't realise how big it was till I retired, till the years after. Can you imagine when we find the first ever goal scorer for a World Cup for Qatar, and I keep saying it, the small things is they'll be very competitive. They just showed in the Gold Cup, in the Euro qualifications, how amazing they are, the setup, what they can do. The test will come in the World Cup. I'm not sure it's about putting expectations of getting through the group. Unless you've played in a World Cup, people won't actually understand the level and also the pressure, and it can't be replicated, that feeling of players that play in these international games and then have to play in front of their home fans, hosting. So I'm thinking about who's going to be the first goal scorer for Qatar and when's their first win or their first point in a World Cup. When that comes, it'll be historical.
Well, touch wood from their point of view. Felix Sanchez and his team, they would seem to have done everything right. They've travelled the world. They're playing in Europe right now, aren't they, with the World Cup qualification there. So they're giving themselves every chance, which is about the process rather than the end result.
Yeah, the process is to put themselves in the most difficult environment possible, under pressure. And that's why the results don't matter. I know people... Now.
Or do they matter next November?
Of course they do. Of course they do. Because our process to win an Asian Cup under Ange Postecoglou is we didn't win in 8 games. And everyone was looking at us in a funny way, but we had to come here to Qatar and play in the hottest time of the year. We had to come and do the hardest training camps that tested us mentally and physically. So the numbers were there for fitness. The technical and tactical were there here and there. We knew when we would change formation against Korea. We knew when we would adapt against Japan. We knew when we would change against Iraq. We knew everything. So it was like the template was written, but it wasn't about results. It was about rotations.
Did you know from 4 years prior, actually here in Qatar, when you lost to Japan, didn't you, in the final? Did you know you were within touching distance of winning it?
I'll be honest with you, we knew before we went into the Asian Cup in Australia. We said it here, we're in Qatar, or could have been in Dubai. We're in a room, and Ange Postecoglou promised that Mile Jedinak would lift that trophy. And we all promised ourselves that we would. You never say that in front of anyone. We say it to ourselves. One of the biggest things for me with playing the GCC countries in Asia is respect. I used to go into the changing rooms after, have photos with the players. You know, we used to, make sure that you still have those great relationships, and that's something that's changing in the game. You know, some countries now think that they've won before it happens, and Asia and all these sort of countries are starting to catch up with each other. So lifting that trophy, it was ours because we'd left every stone unturned. So for me, with Qatar now, the national team, it's not about results. It's about knowing when you change formation against Holland or Brazil or England, the teams that maybe not really had a taste against, Portugal the other day, which was great, and how even international football is.
How key, going back, was it 2006, was that decision to move Australia into the AFC rather than Oceania? Not just in terms of the football, but where it's taken your life now. I mean, would you still be sitting here today if Australia had carried on?
Probably not. It's key because my relationship with Qatar is 2010, 2011. I come here with plantar fasciitis problems and no one could fix it. No one. 9 months I couldn't walk properly. I had needles put in it, machines, shock therapy, you name it. I come here and I spent a lot of time with Rod Whiteley, who's still here to this day.
Is that in Aspetar?
Aspetar. And I actually met them yesterday. We had a joke with Peter de Hooij, and it's like this medical centre here it helped save part of my career. When I broke my 5th metatarsal, I had my ACL, these sorts of things, I always phoned Aspetar. I always had somewhere to come and train. So 2011, there was an article, and we found it now, and it said I'll be back to Qatar to help kids follow their dreams. And that's just coincidence or luck, but they've helped me throughout my career. We helped the national team of Australia. We just held them here for the international friendlies. In the past, we travelled here all the time with our national teams, with the young national teams. So I'd already knew, because of this building, it excites me to have this billion-dollar building of excellence and to be involved inside, to actually use it, how I think is beneficial, to also how Ivan thinks, how everyone thinks, that's what excites me. It's it's something that not many people get to see or even know. So my role is I'm going to bring a lot of attention to Qatar and also Aspire Academy and really share the story of how amazing this place is.
Yeah, I suppose people ask, why are you here? You know, you're an Australian who's been in England a lot of your career. I suppose that explains why Qatar. Where's home for you right now?
Home is Qatar in England, because of my son playing at Everton. It's really important that we can stay close to him to support him, because it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I didn't have that.
Is it harder for him now than it was for you? Or is it easier?
No, it's easy. It's easier for him now because they have everything. You know, the way they get treated, the science behind the game, you know, even the way his education, football caters for these kids, and it's really nice because we do the same here. But no, Qatar's home, and it's being amazing to me. But the main thing here is being involved in the growth, and also just as exciting after the World Cup, because I feel that there's so much more ahead that's going to be exciting to carry on after holding the biggest show on earth.
You know, you've done this whole journey, and it seems, is it fair to say you could break it down? The first half of your career was very much about you and the football.
Yeah.
Then the second half was about the travel. How much of that was down to becoming a family man, the kids getting older, and wanting to not educate yourself, but for them as well?
I think it's difficult. You don't realise what a zone you're in when you're in it, because you're a robot at the start of your career, and everything is about.
Because you have to be quite selfish, yeah.
You can only be selfish because it's around you. They holiday when you holiday. They have to move and do their education where you move. They have to pick up and leave because of their friends. You know, so there's so many things that they have to sacrifice for you. And I suppose I took 2 years off just to educate myself. I did TV with BBC, Match of the Day and Sky Sports. Did the education side, spent so many hours with them on lockdown, which was amazing. And I love that factor that, you know, my 9-year-old boy now plays golf. My daughter plays football. She's here with me now. Everything revolves around my kids. You know, before I go to work, I make sure, like, what does she want to do? You know, drop her to the shopping centre.
When did that change? When did it become about the kids rather than about you?
It changes as you see them grow up, but it's the time where you just stop and you're like, wow, I need to breathe. And being away from England, I think, has been the best thing for me. The 2 years I was there doing TV, it's a lot of attention. And you don't realise you've been away for 8 years and you're doing the biggest shows. And you're on, you know, weekly. And you're back into the same fish pond. So being here in Qatar, you know, you have the football, you have all the shows, TV, everything here, and then you have the education and you have the peace and quiet. So there's a happy medium. Look, for sure, you'll always go back to the fire where the football is, but right now, my plan is 3 to 5 years is to really have a stable implementation into football. You know, really try and help anywhere I can that's needed, and I suppose that happens over time when you earn that trust.
Is there a point where, so if we go through your career really briefly, so you score Australia's first goal in a World Cup, you then become Australia's all-time leading goal scorer, you win the Asian Cup with Australia, you go to cup finals with Millwall and Everton. Is there a point where you can finally say, tick, I've achieved everything I needed to achieve, now I can change and put this into the family? I'm thinking for young footballers coming through, is there almost a point where everything flips?
Listen, in your career, financially, if you play for 20 years, you're stable. Stable if you
Is that what footballers think? Are you thinking about getting that stability for the rest of
my stability was for my family. Simple. Every decision I make, everything that I do is for my family. And it's not just this family here.
Is that more important than being
way more
the cup final or getting a Ballon d'Or nomination?
That's different. That's different because you have to decide, you know, your brothers, your sister, your parents, the sacrifice they make. Of course you make decisions for them, 100%. But it's my family, and my family is my parents, my brothers, my sister, and my kids and my wife. But at the same time, you just need to know what you want. You know, do you want to go win trophies? Do you want to leave Everton, for instance, and sit on the bench and not play as much and win trophies? A lot of people do. right now, you know, I was lucky enough to be with Everton for so long. My first season, we finished 4th. We just sold Wayne Rooney. Signed me and Marcus Vent, we finished 4th. You know, what would Everton give now to finish 4th or 6th? You know, in the 8 seasons, I think, I'm not sure it was the top 8 or top 6, we 4 times above that. But we didn't have the resources we have now to go and buy Lukaku. They had him. If we had Lukaku back in the day when we finished 4th, things would have been a lot different, you know. So I suppose there's a balance, and yes, I would have loved to win more trophies and play in the Champions League and do all those sort of things, but where's the balance? 4 World Cups, 5 goals in 4 World Cups. These are the things that I look at. It can never be replaced. It could be in the future, but everything's a balance, and you need to know what you want. It doesn't matter what everyone else wants, and it doesn't matter whether you make decisions. You have to be pretty thick-skinned, honestly, as a footballer. But I was fortunate enough to be more than financially stable when I retired. I didn't rely on, you know, I paid myself a wage. I didn't rely, and even being here in Qatar is, it's peace and quiet. I can go about my business quietly, I can work on the projects, and I can actually do some really important things in a useful way, regardless of what people think. You know, it's exciting for me, where some people are different. They want to stay in the limelight. They want to be, you know, on TV or whatever it is. But
do you miss that?
I don't miss football playing.
Really?
No, I don't miss that. I'm actually enjoying paddle a lot now. I'm enjoying the
good?
FIFA Legends games.
How's your paddle?
Paddle's good. It's just, you know, here in Qatar, when you're starting to learn more about sport, it's like the second sport. It's incredible. You know, the interaction, everyone can play. And they're the sort of things that I look into deeper and try and study and try and work out, you know.
But you don't miss football, no?
Well, you miss you know, when I joined the FIFA Legends last week, we played a game. And it was all Roberto Carlos, and you have Ronaldo, and you have, you know, Materazzi, and all these players, Alexi Lalas, but they're the nice hits. You know, that's what your body can do. But the playing, you know, it was long.
What was the standard like compared to when you were in your heyday?
Standard's good. We're very competitive.
But you can still get around.
I can still get around, no problems. You know, I'm very competitive. If you put me on a pitch, then I'm there.
Did you score? Did you punch?
No punching. No punching. But of course I scored. You know, you can't play with the legends and not score. But I enjoy it because I play a lot with the coaches here. I play a lot with the locals. There's a lot of games everywhere. Ex-players here in Qatar. So I think that's the nice thing. It's everyone's just so respectful, and everyone just has got a passion for sport.
Tim, I could carry on chatting to you all day, but we want to make this, throw this open to everyone watching us at home, online. So if you have a question for Tim, in a second, we're going to take a pause. So why don't you just send us your questions into the comments box below, and we'll put your questions to Tim. So we're just going to pause for 30 seconds, but get your questions in, and we'll start putting those to Tim in just a moment.
Thank you.
To this, the second of the Aspire Speaker Series events. I'm Andy Kerr, alongside me, Tim Cahill, Australian icon, Everton icon, New York icon. Tim, questions coming in from home, so let's start going through some of these. Dawi Talal asks simply, why did you retire? 39
years old, Dawi, tired, missed being at home with my kids, and it was about time. You know, I think I could have done another year, but it was the right time, just before COVID, but I had a great career, so too old, 39.
When you say tired, I mean, do you start to feel different? Do you feel physically tired? Do you ache after a game?
Look, most of my career, back end, I played with no posterior in my right knee. Got 2 pins in my feet, 5th metatarsal on the side, so you start to get aches. My ACL was good, more calf problems. So tired mentally as well, with the travel, with the expectations. Even retiring from national team, it was a massive weight off my shoulders, just because of the expectations. Every time you played, they expected you to score, which happened more often than not. But tired
There's
mentally.
no one even close to you on that list, by the way, in the Australian list. But you nearly double the second place.
Yeah, and it's a great record to have. You know, I think for me, playing for your country, I always treated it like when I played, it was going to be my last ever game, because you don't really know when you're going to go back, because 5 windows and then your club, you don't know whether you're going to, qualify for the next tournament. So too old, Darwy, 39.
Actually, do you know what? Just to follow on Darwy's question, right? Hypothetical situation, really freak injury situation, crisis hits Australia.
Yeah.
This time next year, could you pull them back on the booth?
As long as I just stayed around the final third, 18-yard box, just swing it in the box, you never know. But you never say that to your country, but leave it for the young kids.
Khalil Mohammed has got in touch. He said, what was the story behind number 4?
Oh, great question, Khalil. So I made my debut at QPR 2004. It was the time I think they gave me 20-something. Then I played the next game. I played in a tournament. They gave me number 10 in the Oceanias, which makes sense. Scored a lot of goals. And then officially, they gave me the 4. It was sort of like, you're officially part of the squad, you're a regular. And when you get your number and you don't change, that means it's yours. So once I got given it and it was official, I was never changing it. I had this same thing for my clubs domestically, number 17. Because when people buy jerseys, if they can't afford the next one, at least they've still got the same number, same name, same team. So at Everton, I kept the same number. New York, China, India, Australia. So yeah, that's the story behind both numbers.
Speaking of numbers, what do you class yourself as? We talk in numbers these days. Are you a 9 or were you a 10?
I started off in the 10 position, attacking midfield, more like an 8. When I played with Gravison and Lee Carsley in the midfield, I was more like an 8. I had to sort of like level off next to Lee Carsley.
Box to box.
Yeah, box to box. Then I turned into a 10, which is more luxury. That means you just stay in the pocket, in the hole. Not a striker, not a midfielder. And you could cheat and make runs into the box. One year we couldn't afford to buy a striker, and then James Beattie was injured. I think Yakubu Ayekbeni. David Moyes put me up front, and I stayed. Obviously with my ability to hold the ball up, to score headers, to find space. They left me there. So with the national team, I started off as a midfielder, but it's a lot easier to score goals as a striker, especially internationally.
Yeah, your heading ability, we didn't really talk about that earlier, but people always assume you were, I won't say a small guy, but you're nearly 6 foot. But they seem to see you as almost a small striker. But then the number of goals you scored with your head. I'm
5'11", 179, I think it is. But the key, what everyone doesn't understand, is timing and understanding. So I know that if you're running down the right, I know that when you take your first touch and then you set yourself, you don't need to look up. You already know where I'm going to be. So that sort of planning means I do not want the ball at the near post. It used to always aggravate me. They know I want it second to the third part of the box, which means percentages me running onto it is a lot higher than the defender. So understanding who you're playing with, timing, running off the shoulder of a defender on the opposite side, it's analysis, it's tactical. It's things that I use now to educate myself as a player.
Who was the best you played with at knowing where to play the ball for you?
Oh, Mikel Arteta, without a doubt. Leighton Baines, Tony Hibbert. So these players had already in training understood my movements. So if I did this to Mikel, and you'll see a lot of the goals, it means it's a quick free kick, back post, goal. I think it was against Palace or Sunderland. Mikel used to do that a lot. So in the free kick, he used to hold the ball and he just used to go like this. And then he put the ball down and take it quickly. So that was one of our moves that we did. But
are you two quite close off the field as well as on it?
Yeah, me and Mikel, was my best man. I was his best man at his wedding with Xavi Alonso and Pepe Reina, which was pretty special. And yeah, really close. He actually really encouraged me to get my license, my pro license. I spent a lot of time with him when he was at Man City, when I first moved back to the UK after retiring. And now he's on the journey of being a manager. You know, Arsenal, having a rocky time at the minute, but I suppose that's the process. You know, I don't think managers go through that honeymoon period their whole career.
Yeah, he must have to really trust his process to get through it. Here's another one from Abby. She says, you've been to the Asian Cup final, you won the Asian Cup, you've seen Qatar do it in 2019. How much of an impression do you think Qatar will make next year, 2022, being the host nation?
Yeah, great question, Abby. I think they'll make an impression as a country with the innovation, the technology, with the culture, with the things to do, putting the GCC on the map, first time ever in this region. And then the football, I think as everyone's watching, they can see for themselves the level of efficiency of what they're producing.
What's more important, what they do on the field or what they do off the field?
Both. You talk about legacies and what is a legacy. It matters when fans come here, the experience they have. It matters that Qatar can not only share the football, but also who they are. You know, the culture of the museums, you know, you see these dhow boats in the water. Do people actually know what they are? You know, what's the pearl? What's the story behind every stadium? There's so many different cryptic messages across the way that they do things, but also the investment into future competitions that will be held here with the 2030 plan. So on the pitch, I think they're going to be excellent. You know, you can't guarantee.
What defines excellence?
Well,
getting out of the group?
Okay, how about this, for example, for Abby? 2006, we had an amazing squad. We got through our group with 4 points. We lost to Italy because of a penalty. They went on to win the World Cup. Did we play amazing? I suppose we did, but we grinded through it. 2010, we got 4 points, didn't go through our group. 2014 was probably the best we've played football-wise. Immature team.
Tough group in 2014.
Yeah, so Chile, Spain, and Netherlands. We didn't get a point, but I don't think people can actually understand how much fun I had footballing-wise, dominating 20 minutes of the first half against Holland and 20 minutes of the second half. But a game is 90 minutes. But actually going toe-to-toe with those countries and showing them what we could do football-wise, we shocked them. You know, speaking to the managers after and the players, it was probably the most enjoyable World Cup, footballing-wise. So we didn't get a point, 0. Yet I felt so great about the way we played. So to judge it, the metric will be for everyone to win. But my metric would be getting the first points.
Do you think the players here would rather be given a draw that was kind, that was realistic to get out of the group, or would they take more if they were in a group, say, with Argentina, Portugal, Messi, Ronaldo, like the genuine stars?
I think they need some big teams. I think there are no real small teams in a World Cup because everyone's been through their battles to get there. But the key thing is, you look Japan against Belgium. Japan are winning. They lose in the dying seconds. That changes all the dynamics of World Cup. Belgium go on to compete in the semis, whatever it is. You need to play against the best so you can measure yourself. And measuring yourself means that a lot of teams are holding these top nations accountable with the formation, the tactics, with hitting on transition. There's so many different ways of looking at it. But when you play, I don't know, someone says an average team. That average team could be Australia for some people. Brazil might look at us and say, Australia, okay, fine. But what happens when we beat you? Because you think that we're an average team and we want to get through the group easy. So now in football, it's changed. There's going to be upsets in this World Cup all across the groups.
How about this from Al Jazzy? Says, what's the impact you want to have in Aspire here? What would you consider a success during your tenure?
Yeah, I think, look, great question again. Mine would be making sure that I can support the philosophy, the mandate of what's required, and that's to help improve the kids. If that's with my knowledge or with my education or with helping to set something up or different projects, or if it's in the league or with the national teams, or new coaches, then that's a process that happens over time. But the biggest thing is the time I spend with them is priceless. It's the time when I was with the 16s. Here is different. When you coach in other countries, you don't get to see them often, at all. We don't get to see them. So when I was coaching at Everton, obviously every day, but they go to school, they do all this. Here, we have them every day. Like a national team of Australia, they only meet 5 times a year. Here with the kids, you know their name. You know the funny ones. You know the ones that like to joke. You know the ones that you have to tell them not to be late. Then you build a rapport. So you're sort of like a father figure. So it's a different way of teaching. So I'm not a manager, I'm not a coach, but what I am is I remember speaking to the table tennis kids. I said to them, look, yes, I'm a chief sports officer, but I'm your mentor, which is just as important. So that's the key elements for me, that I basically can be a mentor to these kids, because it's not about judging them, it's about helping them. And whereas with another national team, the pool's bigger. So you can, I pick you, I take you out, or you didn't do well, I take you out, pick you. Here, we have to really work with the future, and they're doing an amazing job in Asbáir Academy.
Like it. How about this from Tom Crosby? He said, I'm guessing he's an Everton fan, Tom, says, we'd like to see you back at Everton. You've got your UEFA A licence, but it feels like you're not... Yeah.
Pro now.
Okay, get that right. But he says, listening to what you said today, he senses that you're not going in the direction of coaching.
Look, never say never. I think the good thing with me is the relationship that I have with Everton, with the chairman, with Marcel Brands. My wife and kids were at the game yesterday, day before. The chairman couldn't go, so they sat there. I'll always have a connection. Always.
With the owners or with the fans?
Both. Both, doesn't matter. Because...
Doesn't matter because or does it matter? Because obviously Rafa right now, the biggest thing he has to do is, it's not the owners, he has to get the fans to trust him.
He's got the fans, and Rafa's more, he's more of a visionary. He's someone that can see the future, but he sees now what Everton needs. He can't look too far ahead in the fact of, I need to do this in year 3. He has to do it now. So the players that he's bought, and you look at Townsend, you look at Damari Gray, they need a chance. They're affordable, they need to prove themselves, and he needs to relight that fire. But Rafa's a technician, that tactics, plans, strategies, changing. And I got to have a great chat with him after the game. And he wants workers. He wants to reinfuse the feeling of probably when we played in the derbies, recreate.
You did all right in those, didn't you?
They were my favourite games.
How many times did you score at Anfield?
3 times at Anfield, twice at Everton.
Who was the last man to do that, do you know?
I think probably Lukaku.
For Everton, I think. Was it
Dixie Dean? Yeah, Dixie Dean. So that was a long time
No wonder
ago.
they like you.
Yeah, so I suppose, yeah.
So would you say that if Everton fans are watching, they're in good hands?
Yeah, because I think it's been too transitional and too transactional as well as a football club. So I always think that there has to be a plan for the future to support. And when you buy what the manager needs. Help pull in the players that complements the squad. See, for me, when I always look at squads, and now being involved in CAS Open in Belgium, I'm looking what the fans need. I'm looking at what complements the manager, and also looking what keeps the suits happy to the training pitch. So you're that middle conduit that can see both sides, because football's a business. Let's get it right now. And you need those ROIs and those returns to keep competitive. But at the same time, to be successful, it doesn't happen overnight. And I suppose I've learnt that here in Qatar. The investment's there, and 10 years investment has turned into, one of the smallest nations winning a massive trophy in the Asian Cup.
So to go back to Tom's question at the start, are you saying
I'm always involved? I'm always involved with Everton. Still now, I'm involved. Always with the fans. It's really important. Now they're starting to listen to the fans, and that's pretty much what controls the club. And Bill's always been that conduit towards that, and the board.
David Graham says, favourite stadium you've ever played in?
Favourite stadium to play at, because I scored there and because of the atmosphere, would have to be Liverpool, Anfield.
At Anfield?
Yeah, because they're our biggest rivals. I mean, you ask a lot of players what a derby's like, you never forget them. Goodison's obviously my number one in a derby, but when you get to play there and you walk out, see how intimidating it is, there's nothing better than scoring. And I was speaking to Carragher the other day about it. The battles we used to have, Steven Gerrard, these sorts of players, they're sort of like icons of their football clubs. And that's something for me. Anfield was a pretty special place in the noise that it made, but also how quiet you could make it go when you scored. And you see just a little block behind the left-hand side of the goal, just Everton fans going crazy for that, you know, the rest of the game. Okay, you didn't win there, but you give them that light, you know, to hold on to. So yeah, I enjoyed playing at Anfield, but most of the Premier League stadiums, I'm not sure. I don't think there's many I haven't scored in.
Yeah, absolutely. What about this from Mohammed El Salab says, do you think the importance of World Cups and continental tournaments is becoming less important now due to the prominence of the Premier League and the Champions League? And I suppose the relevance to that would be the conversation now about, oh, we should be playing World Cups every 2 years.
Yeah, Mohammed, what a question. Put me on the spot here. So basically with that, it's important of the players' welfare. If you think about and look into it a bit deeper, say for Mohammed, there's 166 member association federations that are asked for the feasibilities. On top of that is Arsene Wenger's leading it. Then there's 80 ex-players, managers that are involved in the process of understanding. We met in Switzerland and then we met again now in Doha. The reports have been really transparent and shared with everyone.
And it's genuinely led by Arsene Wenger.
Yeah, it's incredible because as a player, you have to think openly. You have to think about how this can help Asia, South American players travelling 400,000 kilometres to qualify for a World Cup, because in Asia you need to spend 3 years to qualify for a World Cup. In Europe, 1 year. There's 5 windows. There's obviously a calendar shift. If something did happen, there'll be less football. There'll be less travel for the players. And the other side of it as well is there'll be a mandated, guaranteed 1 month off for every player, which never happens. Like even for me, not that you need it. You look at Richarlison, how many games he's played now. You just go with it because that's what you do. So there's so many elements, Mohammed, and I think they're trying to find a happy medium. And I think the most important thing is trying to find the harmony between UEFA and FIFA to sit down together and also to be transparent. You see with the Super League, there was no transparency with the fans, and that got stopped. The good thing about this, it's open. Whatever Arsene Wenger's made, whatever questions been asked, and the consultation now, is really important that even now I'm starting to answer questions about my experience being involved.
What's your gut feeling? Do you think we will see World Cups every 2 years?
My gut feeling is it's definitely going to help the players. You talk about prestige, you talk about all these sorts of things. This has to be a decision by everyone for the future of the game, not for any other things, and also the reinvestment. More World Cups for 16s every year, potentially. More World Cups for 18s, every 2 years under 20s. So there's a massive benefit in supporting 150 countries that need FIFA's investment to stay alive, federations, and 133 countries that have never played in a World Cup. So it is really important for us to know the detail and also to study it and then be able to answer these sort of questions, because without Mohammed asking this, I can't be as transparent as I've been now with anyone. So it's good. Hopefully it adds some context, and it's a good question, and hopefully there can be a happy medium to finding a good basis for players, federations, and also the biggest leagues in the world.
One argument for moving the World Cup forward that I'd never considered, heard it made the other day, and it really struck me. Right now, every 4 years, if you're a player, if you get an injury at just the wrong time and you miss a World Cup, that can be 8 years between World Cups, and in terms of a career, that could be your entire peak years.
And these are all the things that we talk about. You talk about the length, and when you listen to Ronaldo, you know, his records will get broken, my records will get broken.
You think the Ronaldo record will get broken?
Well, you never know. If they play every 2 years, all the records are going to get broken. But the thing is, it's not about us. Because if it was about us, then you just draw a line in the sand. So the element there is if a World Cup was every 4 years, will my record get broken? 5 goals in 4 World Cups. Will someone play in 4 World Cups if it's every 4 years? Be difficult. Will it get broken if it's every 2 years? For sure. But I don't mind that because it's the next generation. This is my children. This is a generation now where we can't sit here without, having 2 phones on, a score here, an iPad. I don't think many kids even watch 90 minutes of football anymore. So we're going deep into it, but at the same time, I really enjoy these conversations because I can. I've got a seat at the table. It's better sitting there than sitting at home on my couch, just giving a comment and not knowing the details. So it's going to be interesting times, but at the same time, like I said, everyone's going to be consulted, and in the end, the right decision will be made for the future of the game, and hopefully there's 60% of people that are with the right decision.
It's sometimes so hard to know what the right decision is, but having the conversation is key. What about this one then? We've got a couple more to go. We're running slightly over. We'll get as many as we can through. Hamad Al-Khamiz says, what are the key responsibilities of a leader in a major international tournament? It's quite wide-ranging, that one.
To build a leader, it takes years because you play with your team, and for me, leadership is from your behaviours. If I'm in a room, and I always say it, and I'm with my children, every time I leave my room, I pick my plate up, I take it to the sink, I rinse it, I put it in the dishwasher. My kids see it. Then if I go out and I switch the light off, that's called a behaviour. It's something you teach in football all the time, in training, to build repetition. If you keep doing this, then the people around you hopefully will follow. And even if they leave their plate there and you keep taking their plate, and they can see it, one day they're going to be like, I'm going to take my own plate and I'm going to take yours. That's a leader, in my opinion. And a leader sometimes for me works in silence, so he leads with actions. So that means if you miss a tackle, and I know it's not my man, and I can get there, then I'm going to leave my man and sacrifice my position to help you. And then it rolls on. So on the pitch, I led with actions, I led by playing injured, I led by travelling hundreds of thousands of miles to play for my country.
Were you always a leader, or was it something you developed as you got older?
No, I think I was always a leader because younger, I was probably more aggressive leader. I was very demanding, and I wanted results then and there, so we could fix it then. And then in the changing room, the same things, talking to players. Then after, the most quiet and placid. And I find leadership from the pitch into a boardroom helps a lot, because if someone doesn't want to do it, I'll do it. They know very quick.
A bad leader? Did you learn as much from the negatives?
I think you need those bad leaders. Yeah, I think you need players that don't want to be leaders, and you need players that are exciting, that we call it fire. I call it the cheeky players. They come in the game 5 minutes, they come out, but it's about controlling them, managing them, bringing them in when you need them, utilising them and keeping them with you and not losing them, because then that can really spoil a group. So,
how many bad players does it take to spoil one good group? One?
I don't need one, but then you have a leadership group. So the leadership group was built at Everton of me, Mikel Arteta, Tim Howard, Sylvain Distin, Phil Neville. So that controls the core. So we were the leaders.
Did you play with Gaza at any point?
No. Lucky. No.
Because possibly the most talented footballer, I don't know if you remember Gaza, that many of us will have seen live, but I can imagine that character in your dressing room.
You love it, because people could control it, because they had Duncan Ferguson and players like that, but I suppose then comes discipline. So that's part of leadership.
Duncan was finished by the time you came to
No, we played together. Did you? We played together. He's a leader.
Is he? By actions or by speaking?
Both, but for the right reasons. And I suppose now leadership is not so much physical and like saying to a player, come on, this is it, wake up. Leadership now is just about being a good example, you know, and if they see you doing it, when you're a leader, it's okay to make mistakes, and even for players in your team to make mistakes. It's about how you fix them, because you don't have time to worry about how bad the past was, because you can fix it very quickly, you know. So leadership's probably the most important thing in my opinion. When you have a leader you can follow and you can support, it helps. When you don't have leadership, then it's just a mess.
We've gone off on a tangent on that one, but I hope that answers your question, Hamad. Right, let's get a couple more in quickly before we go. Grace M says, how important is living a healthy lifestyle to you today? And what is your daily non-negotiable?
Daily non-negotiable is always exercise. I exercise now purely for mental, not for physical.
What would your daily exercise be?
I basically do 1 hour of any sport. Some days, if I miss an hour, I probably will play paddle on a Friday for 3 hours, and then I'll play football in the afternoon. But it's an hour of cardio. Cardio for me is important, on a treadmill and workout on the floor, you know. So I don't kill myself. You see, because people get things mixed up. It's not about training all the time and killing yourself. It's about moderation. Just move, do something, get out, fresh air. You know, go to the park with your kids. It's not about doing 4 kilometres in 18 minutes or 5 kilometres in 21 minutes. You know, they're the numbers that you think about straight away when you're an athlete or when you're starting to retire, you're still competitive. I just like seeing people getting out, hitting a tennis ball or playing basketball. Just keep active. But my routine non-negotiable is 1 hour a day. Okay. For the mental, not the physical, because that's the hit that I need just to chill.
To clear your head. Yeah. Right, let's do one last one. From SQX, he says, final question then. How do you like living in Qatar? Which seems like a good place to close.
It's peaceful. It's peaceful. And I think the one of the things my life has never had is peace. If you think about it, 15 years in England, 3 years in New York, China for 2.5 years, Australia for 2 years.
And you were always in the big cities, weren't you? Liverpool,
all of them.
New York,
Shanghai,
Melbourne,
even though Sydney's my city, and then India. So you know what? It's perfect. It's perfect. It just keeps me in a nice place to work. Still involved in football heavily, involved in great projects. The culture's great. I love eating late at night. I love sitting there and drinking karak and tea and chilling out. It's different. It's not for everyone, but you know, it's definitely something that I enjoy, and it's good because we have, you know, Xavi's here, we have Ep2, we have, you know, some really big football characters that love the peace and quiet, but also the culture and the football.
How often do you get together with those guys just for a little five-a-side?
We actually do. We play a lot, but lately, with just how busy our worlds are, Xavi with Al Saad, you know, competing to do amazing things, Samuel doing some projects with football in Africa, and me here, we talk a lot, and the nice thing is we're all on the same page. We basically, as much as we can help wherever it's needed, we're always a part of it.
But life here is good.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah. Tim, listen, I could go on all day. We've overrun slightly, but thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, to talk to everyone.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to work with you, and thank you to everyone for your questions and your time.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for the questions. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again soon for the next instalments of the Aspire Speaker Series. But from myself and from Tim for now, a very good afternoon.